All the
this over
school
here. I'll make
teachers
them a
out
cup
there
for you.
know.
Okay.
Thank you guys for being here tonight. For those of you who don't know, I'm Senator Lindsay Titchener, and this is
Representative Jason Nemus.
And then also in the front is
Representative Ken Fleming.
Ken Fleming. Yeah. And we have several other elected officials in here, magistrates and school board members, and thank you guys for being here too. Before we get started, I would like to open up in prayer. Laura's going to pray for us, and then we're going to do the pledge, because we might as well.
There you go.
Sure. Father God, I just thank you for these people who've come here today to learn about school choice and to share their thoughts and concerns. I pray that we would have an amazing open dialogue, that questions would get answered and that clarification would be had. I just ask that you bless the speakers and thank you for letting them be here today. And we just ask all this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. All right.
Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So, thank you all for being here. I think this full room is just evidence of the importance of our children's education to all of us, whether we have kids in private school, public school, homeschool, it matters. But the education of our students is of utmost importance to every parent. That we have kids who are well equipped to go out into the world and be successful and feel good and confident about themselves. And we've got to make sure at the foundation education, their education is strong and solid. And so as we look at school choice and educational freedom, educational diversity, whatever you want to call it, we have to look at where we've been, where we are now, and where we could possibly go. So where we've been in the past, Kentucky's always ranked not great in the United States as far as our education. What are we at now? It's not good.
Not good. Depends on who's ranking.
Okay, that's fair enough. It's not good. We want it to be better. It's kind of historically been bad. Of course, we all across the United States had a hiccup in 20 and 21 and recovering slowly in 22. But prior to that, Kentucky has been way behind, and we've got to move beyond that. So we have seen some improvements recently, but I personally feel like school choice and school options for parents where the money will follow the student and fund the student's education as opposed to fund a system of education will be beneficial for our state to move us forward. So I want to read to you all one of the hiccups, the biggest hiccup for us with this issue is our state constitution. But under the section regarding education, in 183, our charge as members of the General Assembly, it says the General Assembly shall, by appropriate legislation, provide for an efficient system of common schools throughout the state. How did we get that? Did you set that alarm? Let me read that again really quick. The General Assembly shall, by appropriate legislation, provide for an efficient system of common schools throughout the state. And when I hear that, I think, okay, our job is to make sure our schools are operating efficiently. So what's efficient mean? Achieving maximum productivity with minimum wasted effort or expense. And I can look at our public school system and say, I don't know that we are operating efficiently. And then I can look at the data and the test scores and say, okay, we're definitely not operating efficiently if our result is that students across the state are reading with a 44% proficiency rate. That's our graduating students. So we're graduating at 90%, but they're reading at 44%. So something's off, and we need to make sure that we get that more in line and not just pushing kids through the system. For me, for school choice and educational freedom, we have to make sure our kids' education is the best that it can possibly be. And if they are graduating without the ability to read very proficiently, we have failed them, and we are not serving those students. So I look at this measure that we're putting forward on through legislation in order to change our Constitution, which you guys will all have a vote on. But I'm also filing legislation to try and improve the system that we have and continue to make that strong, because the truth of it is over 80% will stay in our public schools. So we have to make sure our public schools are strong, that they have the funding that they needed, that they have the tools and resources that they need, and that we are producing students who can have the basic skills to be able to read and write and do math. And I filed a legislation to bring back cursive. It's probably my favorite bill that I've filed this year. It's gotten the most support of all bills I've filed, but anyway, so that's my perspective on this topic, and I'm gonna let Jason talk for a little bit.
Thank you, Lindsay. I agree with that. I want to start by saying what is most important, and what is most important is a strong public school system. Whether it's in Oldham County or Jefferson County or Shelby County or Anchorage, the 4 school districts that I represent, whether it's in Harlan County or where, it doesn't matter where. Most of our kids, the lion's share of our kids are going to be in our public school systems, and we need to make sure that they are strong and that we continue to make them even stronger. So, as Senator Titchener said, there's a number of bills that have been passed to improve our public schools. In JCPS, for example, Senator Titchener has filed in the Senate, and Representative Fleming has filed in the House a bill that would review JCPS, which obviously 1 in about 6.5 of our kids across the Commonwealth of Kentucky that are in public schools are in JCPS, over 95,000 kids there. And so we're going to look at the governing structure at JCPS to determine, is it what it needs to be, or measure it not only against itself, but against districts of similar size throughout the country. There are 21 districts with between 80,000 and 120,000 students. And when you look at where JCPS spends its money, it's at the bottom of getting dollars to the classroom and at the top of busing and things of that nature. So if that's legit, okay, that's fine. We'll prop it up even more. But it seems to me like there may be some questions that need to be asked. So we're going to be asking those questions, not only with respect to the bill that they've introduced to put a task force together to really get down in the weeds and figure out where they are, make recommendations on structure, but also with respect to an audit that Allison Ball is going to start or has started. About 11 years ago, Adam Edelin, Democrat auditor, had an audit of JCPS, and he found some pretty scathing things. 43 cents on the dollar went to the classroom and things of that nature. So how are we doing? And it's been 11 years, so it's time for a follow-up. And that's obviously JCPS, but these issues are important throughout the Commonwealth of Kentucky. And in some ways, they're more important in more rural areas because in Jefferson County, Oldham County, you have some other options. Parents have other options if they can afford it. And in some places, they don't have any options. Of course, when I say if they can afford it, that's a big proviso there, right? I mean, I'm relatively wealthy, so I sent my kids to St. Margaret Mary from K through 8, and 2 of my boys are in high school and they go to JCPS High School. I went from K through 12 in JCPS. My wife teaches at a middle school, a JCPS middle school, so I love public schools. But we had the opportunity, if we wanted to send them to a private school, which we did for K through 8. It was right for us. My first son went through a public school, K through 5. We took him out because of some situations that weren't right for him, and we were the parents who made that determination. Then went to Bloom Elementary in the Highlands. So we want, with respect to the school choice, to give people who don't have the means that people who are, like me, very fortunate to have, want to give them opportunities as well. There's a lot of JCPS teachers that move to Shelby County and Oldham County because they have the means to choose, and others don't. So we want to give them that opportunity, and so that's fundamentally what this thing is about. I want to say I would not support school choice if the evidence showed that it harms public schools. The evidence is to the contrary. There have been 29 studies of areas where they have school choice, and there are 26 of those studies say that the public school actually improves more than the control group. One study says it's a little bit worse, and then 2 studies say that there's no difference at all. So if I thought this would be a harmful effort to public schools, I'd be the principal opponent because I don't think it does. I think it improves public schools, and we can talk about theories of why if you want to. Then I'm a tremendous proponent of school choice. I think it's financially the right thing to do. I think it's socially the right thing to do, but most importantly, I think it's the academic correct thing to do. Nobody knows what's best for that kid more than the parent, and so the parent should be able to make the determination, and that's what this is all about. Since we've taken over the House and the Senate in 2017, Republicans, we've done a lot of really good things. We're reducing your income taxes. We're having sensible spending. We've done a ton of things on a bunch of different issues. We've passed 3 school choice bills, but the courts keep knocking them down. I think there are ideological reasons. I think they create rules. By the way, they're having in a number of these cases, we're the only state in the country that's presented with these questions where it's been decided in this way. So I think it's a partisan thing at the court, but whatever reason, we have to get around it. And so we've tried with legislation, and the court keeps knocking it down. So now it's time to put the question to the people in a constitutional amendment. And so we'll see once and for all what the people want. I'm hoping that they support it. So I guess we'll go into the particulars of the bills or the particular of the language in response to questions, but that's by way of introduction. I think maybe that's enough.
Good job. You brought some data. Very good. Okay, so we have two bills that have been proposed in the House. House Bill 208, which was proposed by Representative Josh Callaway, and then House Bill 2. So for those of y'all who don't know, if it's number 1 through 10 of a House bill or a Senate bill, it's a priority piece of legislation. So House Bill 2 is the priority piece of legislation. That doesn't mean House Bill 208 won't meld its way, possibly, in the negotiating process, and some of that verbiage might move over.
Right.
Possibly. Happens a lot. So do you have copies of, you have it memorized?
Of House Bill 2?
Yeah.
I don't have it memorized, but I did pull it up on my phone before.
Okay. I got a copy of it.
And the current language is not the language that'll be ultimate. That'll ultimately pass the legislature, I don't think.
Yeah. So basically, I'll read section 1 to you all, and this is what will be on the ballot, okay? Section 1, to give families and children more educational opportunities, are you in favor of enabling the General Assembly to provide financial support for the education costs of students in kindergarten through grade 12 who are outside the system of common public schools by amending the Constitution of Kentucky as stated below? So that moves on to section 2. What, if you guys have this in front of you, what is in bold that you'll see on the ballot? Notwithstanding the provisions of section 171, 183, 184, 187, and 189, the General Assembly may provide financial support for the education of students outside the system of common schools. The General Assembly may exercise this authority by law in particular places as it deems proper. So.
All right. Okay, so there's 3 thresholds that we're trying to get over. The first is pass the General Assembly. Nothing goes to the people unless we pass the General Assembly. The second is, have the voters vote for it in the ballot box in November. And then the third is because we know there will undoubtedly be a lawsuit, no matter what. So we're trying to anticipate what the lawsuit will be and to try to make sure that we lock that down so judges can't get creative as they have a penchant to do when they don't like the legislation. And so we're trying to look at those three things. And so, they get very creative. For example, when we passed Marcy's Law the first time, we passed it the exact same way that the judiciary passed the judicial article in 1976 and family courts in 2000, both written by the Chief Justices at the time. Well, because they didn't like Marcy's Law, victims' rights, because they didn't like it, they said, well, that's not enough. You now have to put the whole Constitution that's being amended. So they get very, very creative. And so we're trying to predict what the creative arguments will be to cover them down. That's why the listing of the numbers of the sections of the Constitution are included in there, because an argument might go, well, they said that the people, by voting on this, amended the Constitution to give the General Assembly the power to do this, but because it didn't mention other sections, it still has to be in compliance with the other sections, which is totally against, obviously, what we're trying to accomplish here. And so that's the reason that we have those listings. Some of the wording is not all that good for the second purpose. The second purpose being getting it passed in November. Notwithstanding, you start a sentence with notwithstanding. What is that? That's legalese. We're trying to convince the voter that this is something good to vote for. So we might not want to start there. So we've changed the wording around a little bit. We've used some suggestions from 208. We've talked to former Chief Justice and other justices of the Kentucky Supreme Court. We've talked to dozens and dozens of lawyers. And so I feel very good about a legal challenge. And the question is whether we can get it passed in November. So right now we're trying to refine the language in a way that is more persuasive to just a regular, Miss Jones in Barberville goes to the polls and she reads it and she understands it. And she says, okay, I'm going to vote for that. So that's what we're trying to accomplish there.
can you give us a quick rundown of what makes this one particularly different without me having to read it to 208?
Well, 208, Josh, by the way, Representative Callaway has filed that at least last year, may have filed it the year before, I'm not sure. And it's a very good bill, I think, but we didn't think that it tied up all the loose ends on what the legal questions would be. His bill, in my view, was more toward, for the layman's terms, which is good. I mean, obviously, we need to be more layman-like, but I think his was a little bit more than it. We didn't have, just as I said before, it didn't tie up all the potential legal attacks as we think we needed to. So that's why the language is different.
There was one part of 208, and I'll just read this to you because we did get a lot of questions online about this. Wrong one. Okay. Section 184, let's see, any provision for the educational cost of students outside the system of common schools for parents of limited financial means.
Right.
And that was where a lot of people went, what does that mean?
Yeah,
How do we qualify and distinguish who has limited financial means?
Yeah.
I believe he has filed an amendment to that, and that language was taken out.
Yeah.
But I did like the way it ends, systems of common schools, so long as funds are not taken directly from the common school fund.
Yeah.
Just keeping that.
Which, by the way, there is
emphasis
no
on-
such thing as a common school fund. There used to be, but there's not anymore. It's now put in the general fund, and it's, the only difference is we have a road fund that goes to roads and bridges, and then we have the general fund. And the general fund pays pensions, it pays, it pays salaries for all the state workers, it pays for our education, all that kind of stuff. So we don't have the common fund anymore, but it's been interpreted in court cases to be the general fund. John, you had a question?
My question is there still a constitutional requirement for there to be a common school fund?
No. Well,
Sounds like it.
I don't
If you
think-
read our
It's still in the Constitution.
well, we don't tax to the common fund, but to the fund for common schools. So it used to be a tax for that purpose. Now there's not. It's a general tax that goes to the general fund. I don't think there's a requirement to have a common school fund, but there is a requirement if you have a common school fund that you not deplete it for things that are not in education. Yes, ma'am.
So the way that it was rewritten from limited financial means to being more open like that, so that means that if it passes and it's voted in, that means that anybody, despite their wealth, can take advantage of the school voucher.
Yeah, so here's the process, what it's gonna be. So if the people vote for it, then they're saying we want to have school choice. And then the legislators, and this is how it is in, Constitution just says, here's the broad parameters. It doesn't set forth all of the particulars, that's for statute. That's why if you go to Constitution, it's one book and the statutes are 50 books or whatever. Obviously, you know that, obviously. And so the question of whether or not it's federal poverty level or 2 times federal poverty level or no limit or whatever is going to be in the statute and not the Constitution. And so there will not be, in my view, there will not be a plan that ever lets Jason Nemus benefit from school choice dollars. We're too wealthy. It's going to be for people of, I don't know what limited means, but it's going to be people at the middle class or lower end. We're not going to have millionaires get these dollars. Although I think there's a strong argument made that maybe they should get these dollars because they're paying these dollars for the purpose. We're paying these dollars for the purpose of educating all children. But I can't imagine that will ever pass. But that will be a question for the legislature on where exactly that line is.
And I think one of the biggest concerns that we hear about school choice from those within the system is that those dollars will follow wealthier people who can go ahead and leave. But if you look at other states, West Virginia has something called the Hope Scholarship Fund, which is basically an educational savings account type of funding. It's who gets it first are those who have the financial need, then those who have IEPs or special learning needs who aren't being served in the school that they're at. So they categorize it, because if it just went open to everybody, then we're gonna have some major financial problems supporting our current public school systems, and we can't do that, obviously.
And I think the best way to look at what is in the mind of the legislature is look what we've passed that the Supreme Court knocked out. But what we passed was means tested. It was not for everybody. You're gonna hear, obviously the teachers unions, they're gonna see this as existential. KEA will spend $10 million, no doubt about it. They're gonna call us all the names in the book. They're gonna say this is for wealthy people, millionaires. All that's garbage, but that's what they're gonna say, no doubt about it. And so just look at what we passed. What we passed is a means tested program, and that's what'll pass. I won't vote for something that's just for everybody, and so that won't be something we pass. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say that, what Jason's referring to is House Bill 563 in
Yeah.
2021, which was the Educational Opportunity Accounts, which is like a tax credit scholarship. It was interesting how the Supreme Court struck it down, but it basically nonprofits could donate towards a scholarship fund and get a tax credit. And because they got the tax credit, they were saying that's using state dollars to go towards what could be a religious school.
It really jeopardized
or
all the tax
whatever.
credits, by the way.
Yeah,
Yes,
it
sir.
really was a good bill. It might come back.
Yes, sir.
Indiana's law started the same way, and then they repeatedly raised that means testing. And then last year, they removed it altogether, basically, so anyone can get it. And the report from last year showed that now they're at like 68% white people, and the average student comes from a household of $81,000 or more. So it used to be that way, and then grew into not means tested.
Yeah, I don't know the percentage of white people in Indiana, but 68 doesn't offend me. I mean, in Kentucky, I think 8% are African American, so, I mean, I don't know what the right number would be.
Getting the money, not.
Well, yeah, I don't care about race. If it's, the means is the thing that I think we should look at. I don't know Indiana's population numbers, but if they're 80% white, does 68% offend you? Doesn't offend me.
Well, what about the money that I mentioned?
The money's a different question. I don't know Indiana's plan, so I can't speak to how
I'd
they
be
do
curious
it.
to know how their public schools are doing. Are they collapsing? I don't know. I haven't heard that. But if they keep expanding it, it must be
Okay.
working. I mean, if they're not, if public schools are still operating
Both of
and,
your answers were concerned.
Okay, well, I guess well, there's gonna be a number of people who vote no, and, and a lot of people vote yes. Not gonna convince everybody.
You answered neither of those matter.
I couldn't hear you.
You both basically answered neither of those matter.
well, if public school is being funded in Indiana and they're still able to expand school choice to people, then why would it matter? That means everybody's getting served well. And if they can financially support that system, great.
Right, because if you're billing it now as means tested, like they did, and then you're taking away the means test, and then it becomes a voucher for people with means, then it wasn't, and it was a lie.
Well,
Right.
I wouldn't say that it was a lie. I would say that they graduated they progressed to be able to sustain
I'm
both
sorry, I don't
systems.
understand how you.
It sounds like they've been able to sustain both systems financially. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to pull the means testing back. They financially, it wouldn't be able to do that.
Yeah, I don't know Indiana's plan. I don't know if they lied or not. Maybe their people demanded that they continue to make changes. I don't know how they did. In Kentucky, I know what we're gonna be doing, and that's, if 20 years from now, the legislature changes, and people demand something different of the legislature, then the legislature needs to respond and listen.
Okay, so means testing means something now, but it won't in the future.
That's your words, not mine. I didn't say that.
That's Lindsay just said.
That's not what she said either.
What I said, if the systems are supporting themselves, why does it matter? If the financial system can support both public schools and school choice, why would it matter?
Well, you guys said means testing, you said means testing.
That's right.
So it matters to you right now.
Right now
Right.
it does. It would need to do that right now in the state of Kentucky.
But to be clear, because I don't want you to go back out and say we said something we didn't say. We did not say it means something now and it won't mean something later. So that was your words, that were not our
That's
words.
what I would like to know, if you're gonna secure, if you're gonna make sure of that, if, you know what I mean? Cause it sounds like what you're asking for is kind of like a blank check.
It's not a blank check. There's an election every 2 years to throw us out of office. And so if the people don't like what we're doing, they need to get rid of us. And so but that goes the other way too. If they say they want to get rid of the plan if it starts, or if they say they want to expand the plan, that's the people's decision. And the legislators need to be responding to that. In my district, school choice is overwhelmingly popular. It sounds like you're going to vote no. That's fine. There will be a number of Kentuckians that vote no. We will not persuade everybody. I think the stronger evidence is, quite clearly, that the states that have it, and by the way, it's almost every state. Barack Obama was very supportive of school choice. Massachusetts, the big conservative state of Massachusetts has it. Minnesota has it. Maryland has it. Florida has it. Arizona has it. I could say up here, I could go alphabetical order and name almost every state that has it.
Is it all
I think
based
it's
on
just one or
finances?
two, yeah.
Are all of those states based
I don't know
on
the answer to that.
financial need?
I don't know the answer to that, I don't know.
Tennessee's on.
Yeah. And so ours will be based on what our people want us, Pam.
Okay, so I've heard discussions about the money following the student in the realm of all the students are on the same playing field now. So the public students get money, private school students get money, everybody gets money. The schools are forced to compete for the student. And so they have to create a system that's better. So if I hear, and I get means testing, but quite frankly, I don't see, it feels like a poison pill, because if all we're doing is bending ourselves and twisting ourselves into a pretzel to accommodate KDE, that,
I don't think-
are the teachers' unions,
I don't
are
think
the
you're looking at
ads,
two people
I
who
don't
care
know,
about
I don't
KDE.
understand it. Because if you have all the
If they're
students
for it,
on
I'm
the
likely against it.
on the same financial playing field, the schools are required to compete for the student. So JCPS or any other public school is required to get better, or those students are gonna leave, and the money goes with them.
Yeah.
So that's,
benefits of this, yes.
yeah, so I guess if you're means testing, then you're saying Jason Nemus's kids are not being competed for. Jason Nemus's kids are already, maybe they're getting the short end of the stick, Jason, you just don't know.
Well, there's a lot of people who don't like this at all. There's a lot of people who want it full-fledged, and I don't think that's what the legislature wants. I think the legislature wants it to be means tested. And so I don't think people like me should ever get it, because I can already make that choice. It's something, we're trying to,
But is the choice you're making better? So, and well, let's let it play out. Let's say that the public schools are all in and they're like, we're competing for every kid. We're gonna do everything we can. And our kids are we're going to the top on this thing. Your kids are now behind because they're means tested,
My kids
right?
are
They're behind. If JCPS gets in the game and they really, JCPS for you, and they start competing for those students and they get better and better and better, your kids are sitting on the sideline going, whoa, what happened? So that's what I'm saying. You shouldn't have to worry about means testing if all the kids are on the same financial playing field.
which they're not.
But you have to put them there, I guess, and
Well,
let the
understand.
school
So
systems
that's-
compete for them, just like
Yeah.
we do in business, right? We compete for our
The
customers.
way that I look at it, it's something to grow into if we can. I think anybody who's paying tax dollars should get to use those tax dollars however they want. However, it would collapse the system, and we have to make sure we're protecting the system in place, opening it gradually, so that we can serve kids who don't have a choice to leave, who are stuck in the system, or kids that aren't being serviced with, special educational needs. And then if we can grow, we grow. If that's what the legislature wants, if that's what the people want, then we can move forward.
I do want to say one thing, Pam, that you said the schools get the money. Schools don't get
No,
jack.
the kids get the
The
money.
parents get the money,
Yeah,
right,
but JCPS says, I want every kid.
Well, then they should earn
We
it.
gotta do whatever we can to get every kid.
Then they need to earn them.
But you should-
Exactly, that's my point. They earn them because now they have to, or like you said, the system collapses. And so if you're gonna means test, then people that are already making a gazillion dollars, they don't get the best of the best.
I don't think we have a chance to pass something that's not means tested. Yes, sir. And then come back there.
She was talking about the money following the kid. Now, if the money follows kid, Jefferson County gets more money per student than Oldham County. So is that gonna be equal out, or how's that gonna happen?
That's a problem with seat funding. That has nothing to do with school choice, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, so is your question, is a kid that goes a parent who says, I want school choice for my kid in Jefferson, will they get the same as in Clinton County? I think the answer to that is no. The answer to that is whatever county the kid is in, what the state contribution toward each child in that county will follow the kid. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a state contribution that would follow the kid. Yes, ma'am.
I just wanna clarify between, cause charter and private are being thrown around, and I'm assuming those aren't interchangeable.
They're not at all. Yeah.
Because, yeah, I just wanna point it out, because in the charter school language that we all had to, every board of education had to adopt, it specifically states it can't be, it's non-denominational only.
Yeah.
And can't go, so I just wanna make it clear to people that you're not talking about Trinity and St. Max.
And charter schools, first of all, charter schools are public schools. They're public charter schools. So no, we're not talking about charter schools. We're talking about giving the dollar to a parent who wants to send her kid to St. Aloysius, if she wants to send her kid to St. Al's. We're talking, she can go to Oldham, she can go to Crestwood Elementary if she wants to. want to send their kid there. That's the mother and the father's decision. That's what we're talking about. Yeah, so, but charter schools is a different animal altogether. Because those are still public schools. Yes, sir.
Me?
Yep.
My turn?
I think so. Maybe, no, it was that fellow back there. Then you, let me get this guy right here. He's, sorry, my bad.
I want to look back to the seat question. I know there's a task force that's being put together to look at seat funding. I know seat funding is always a hot topic issue.
Right.
But I want to be super clear on this. So, and I know this is all conjecture, right? Like you get past the election first, then we can start doing, all that. So is the current thought that, okay, we'll just take kind of what the seat allotment would be per kid in whatever county you're in, and that money would then, instead of going to the district, would then go to the parents, and the parents would then get billed by whatever school they go to. Is that kind of what we're thinking about?
Yeah, that's right. Just like right now, and so how it will affect the local school district, is the school district would keep the local dollars, obviously. And they don't get the state dollars now anyway if you send your kid to a private school, so it wouldn't affect them. And in some way, it would help them because they continue to get the local dollars without having to educate that kid.
So I think.
And the local dollars in a place like Oldham are the lion's share of the money.
Yeah, so kind of as a follow-up to that, right now, like you said, those private school kids aren't getting any seat funding, right? So if you take your kid out, you put them in private school.
That's right.
They're out, okay.
Other than some transportation dollars, which is, no, they don't get seat dollars.
But under this, now they would? Is that kind of the idea?
If they qualify, that's right.
Yeah, so, are we, as part of this, thinking about increasing overall seat funding? Because my concern is, I don't know what the percentage is, let's lowball, let's say it's 10%, I think it might be higher than that.
Is what?
Let's say 10% of the kids in Kentucky are in private schools right now.
Yep, I don't know.
Right? Yeah, so let's just, whatever it is.
Right.
That would mean that in order for seat funding to stay equal as it is right now, there would need to be at least a 10% increase, right? So,
Well, but remember, they're not teaching that kid, right? So their costs are going down. They still have the hard costs, no doubt about that. But if let's say 10 kids leave, that's 10 kids fewer that they have to teach. If 20 kids fewer, 25 kids, and that's a teacher they don't need to, so it's not a dollar for dollar there, right? So I don't know that if 10% of the kids leave, that doesn't mean that SEEK has to be increased by 10%, because the cost that the school district is responsible for is going down also.
But those 10% of kids weren't getting seat money, or there wasn't, I know they're not getting, you know what I'm saying? They weren't getting seat money before, but they are now. That's what I'm saying.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
I get what you're saying. So the kid who's already in private school.
Yes.
I thought you were talking about a kid that's in my bad. Kid that was in public school that goes. First of all, with the means tested, there will be some, but I don't think a lot of people who are in private will qualify, but they might. I don't know the portfolio of every private school, obviously. That money will not be coming out of SEEK. That will come as a separate appropriation. So the money that the SEEK dollars will still stay with public schools only, and then there'll be a separate appropriation for school choice. Yeah, but I see what you're saying. Thank you for that.
That educational opportunity accounts would.
Right.
And that's nonprofits who could donate to that EOA account that then could pull the scholarship funding out of. So it is a separate bank of money.
Here first. Yes, sir.
All right, I love education. I'm a product of the public school system as well, not here in Kentucky. But with that, we talk about children either falling through the cracks or falling behind. And, God bless America, we all want our kids to really excel. And not all schools are the same, not all communities are the same. And we wrap this idea of school choice in a valve, we're here to help kids. Okay, maybe. I don't think it's really a popular option in a lot of states. The majority of states do have form of school choice. I looked up the number for you, Jason, and it was 29 have some form of school choice.
Oh, it's a lot more than that. It's in the 40s.
I think it is.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened in 2 years.
No,
I know
it's a lot more than that.
A lot.
It's in the 40s.
So,
Maybe they're not counting it.
Well, it's in the 40s.
but looking at the root of the problem, focusing on educational performance and readiness, we should really be focusing on fixing those problems than really looking at a money grab and moving it around and thinking that's going to solve our problems. I would like to see a promotion for encouraging excellent performance in academics and great schools that achieve or excel beyond maybe certain standards, be it a state level, which we all should have.
Like
state
merit-based
performance.
funding,
Yeah,
performance-based.
absolutely, performance-based, merit-based, and help grease those skids. Money's important for schools, I mean, it's.
No doubt.
But it doesn't solve all the problems, and I see that just shuffling kids around isn't going to fix the problem. And some of the better schools, which people may be interested in their kids to, may bring them down a little bit of a notch, and it may not be fixing the problems in the lower performing schools.
I think we can learn a lesson from Mark Twain here. The beautiful thing about Kentucky is, if when the world ends, I want to be in Kentucky because it happens 20 years later,
Yeah.
right? We're not the first. So your comments would have been a strong argument against it, the first state. There's been 43, I think, actually, but there have been in the 40 states. And what we found is it's unquestionable that school choice programs improve the life of the kid in school choice, but also the public school. And there's a lot of reasons for that. But if it were just a money grab or moving kids around, I'd be like, no doubt, bro, I'm beside you. Let's hold hands. We're together. Kumbaya. That's not the experience of the states that have this. So the benefit of Kentucky is we can learn from those, which are almost all of them very successful, which is why red states, blue states, purple states, try to take it away from the Minnesota kid. Try to take it away from Massachusetts kid, and you just got to fight with a liberal or conservative parent. So your argument isn't borne out by the facts on the ground. There is no money grab here. We're talking about educating kids, which is what we pay taxes for. In part, obviously, we pay for roads and everything else as well. So I don't foresee there's any problems with it at all. And so, I mean, I think
I would say, we've been trying to fix things for a long time. In the 90s, we had CARA, the Kentucky Education Reform Act, and things did improve. How many of y'all went through the CARA change and you had to do those writing portfolios? Whoa.
Well, my kids
hated that, but I really do appreciate it now because I learned how to become a writer. But we've done a lot of those changes. Out of CARA formed the KDE, which now is a giant financial monster that needs to be scaled back, and that's one of the big, I think, contributing factors to why we can't get the right funding at the school level for students, because there's so much heavy administrative roles. But if you look at, and I've got these, this is from our Kentucky district data profiles that you can get on our website. It's interesting stuff. And I went back 10 years, 5 years. So in 2022, the data was for the economically disadvantaged for reading for the state of Kentucky, 33, graduating with 33% proficiency rate in reading, 25 in math. For all students, 44%, and in math, 36%. So these numbers aren't good. They're not good way back, way back. So I think we do need to look at what other options there are. And those who are able to leave public schools or pay for private tutoring, and a lot of people can't afford to do that, they're doing that. The ones who cannot do that we are absolutely leaving them behind. We're failing them. It's almost criminal to this point where we're graduating students who cannot read. And if you do not gain that skill before the 4th grade, you're gonna struggle the rest of your life being able to learn how to
So
read.
would those schools then be reevaluated about the
Yes.
continued operation?
Absolutely.
And we do
Those
that.
save funds
Yeah.
and move them to better performing schools.
Yeah, we do evaluate schools, obviously. And so that's something we obviously have to continue to do. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I just need to clarify so I walk out with the right information on what you said. But what I understand you having said is that local dollars still go to the school even if the student goes to a private school and the local dollars is the bulk of the money.
Well, it depends on what county.
But, okay,
It
but
depends on
at
what
the
county.
same time,
Some counties, the state.
at the
hold on,
same
hold on.
time,
Some-
wait. Let me
Well,
just finish this out a second though.
Okay.
Because you're talking mostly to, I think, Oldham County
That's
people
right.
right now, so
Yeah.
let's focus on
Not every
Oldham
county's the
County.
same though. Well, there's a camera here and there are people from Clinton County may watch
Okay,
it.
hi.
Yeah, okay.
But at the same time, you're saying if we do it needs-based, financially needs-based, then the school system's gonna collapse. But how can it collapse if the local money is still staying at the school?
I don't think we said that needs-based.
Well, financial needs-based. You're limiting it to lower finances.
Right.
Yeah,
even though some people might have 2 jobs to send their kids to private school.
We're saying it would collapse if it wasn't.
If it was wide open, it would not be sustainable to
It-
start that way.
But they're getting the local money anyways and keeping it at the local school.
Right?
So how does it collapse
I don't think it
financially? Okay, you don't think it does?
No.
So then why are you so focused and absolutely refuse to vote on a bill if it's not financial needs-based?
Because I don't think my constituents want me to vote on that.
Okay,
Yeah, and I think I'm listening to them. I don't think they want somebody that makes the money I make to have.
okay, I have no idea who you are or how much money you
Yeah.
make, but
He's
there's
loaded.
there's a lot of people,
I'm
there's a
not loaded,
lot
but
of
I'm not.
He's
So-
on dinner for us all
So,
night.
so it's for,
There's
it's
a
for
lot
middle
of
class
people who took
I'm not
on,
loaded.
who take on second jobs or who retire and continue to work
Understand.
so their kids can go to a private school. But then you're punishing them for being older and working harder.
It's a good point. Good point. And maybe they take into account the average wage. I don't know how you take that into account. I think that's a good point. We don't want to disincentivize somebody from working very hard to make, $120,000 with 2 jobs. If that's what he or she need to do, then I don't think, so I think it's a good point you make. And that's the complexity of it, and why the constitutional amendment can't have all of these things put in it. That's something that we certainly need to tease out when we pass the statute. Yes, ma'am.
School choice would benefit my.
She's up, and then you're up, and then over here. Yep, I'm sorry. She's first.
I think
You're next.
as a taxpayer, I think my biggest concern with this is that knowing all of the hoops that KDE puts forth for public schools, I find it odd that we're gonna give money to schools that don't have to also jump through those same hoops. Because none of the stuff that applies to us applies to Trinity or St. X or private schools. They don't have to take every kid, they can kick kids out pretty easily. And that's all fine and dandy, but then KDE should make them follow all the rules and hoops that.
Or
public
KDE
schools
should
have.
stop making you follow silly rules. Yeah.
Either way.
We had this debate on charter schools, and we went to you guys, we went to the Superintendents and School Board Association, and we said, give us these silly rules. You didn't give us any. So I'll ask again, if there are silly rules that don't need to be followed, give us a list, and I'll file a bill as soon as possible to get rid of those things. You should not be following rules that don't make any sense. But we certainly shouldn't saddle charter schools or private schools on following silly rules either. And so the rules that are essential, then let's follow those. But let me say again, we're not giving them money. The parent is giving them money. So it's not like we're saying, Trinity, here's some money. We're saying, Mrs. Jones, you've got a child. What's best for your kid?
Okay,
And by the way,
when
Trinity costs,
Mrs. Jones says,
you can send 2 kids to
mine's
Trinity.
My best choice is Trinity.
Yeah,
I'm gonna take my dollars and give them to Trinity.
Yeah.
It's not their dollars, you gave them that money.
you understand.
It's all our
But we're
dollars.
paying taxes.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
That's right.
As a taxpayer, that's all fine and dandy, but
Yeah.
if you're letting them give money
Yeah.
to schools that don't have to follow the same hoops to jump through that public schools have to jump.
Well, it sounds to me like you think they shouldn't because you don't think public schools should. I think public schools should not have to follow all the rules that they have to follow.
Amen to that.
Okay, let's get rid of those rules rather than say let's saddle them onto other people.
That's a good step too.
Yeah, so let's, I certainly, let's
But until
definitely,
that happens, I think they should get the same rules that we do. and
well, it's Monday, let's do it by Friday. Let's do it. I'm serious. If there are rules that public schools shouldn't follow, let's get rid of them.
When's your last day to file bills in the House?
We'll
25th?
we'll expand it.
28th?
It will extend it, I guarantee you, for this purpose. The Speaker of the House is in this county. And if there are silly regulations that our schools shouldn't follow, let's get rid of them. I agree with that 100%.
That's awesome.
No doubt about it.
That's better.
Yes, ma'am.
So I live in a household that would probably benefit from school choice if it's passed, because I'm under the federal poverty level. But I don't see the benefits of it because it doesn't address the teacher retention issues, and it doesn't address that there are fewer graduates from like universities like U of L or Maryland or wherever to become
Go on,
teachers.
Yeah.
So how is that school choice going to affect that?
Yeah, so if anything, it actually helps that. It does. I think very minimally though, very minimal.
Okay.
Because if the more kids that go out of public schools, the less fewer public school teachers need. But that's very minimal. That's not really the answer to the question. The answer to the question is we need to do better with getting teachers. Let me tell you this. There was 123 people. I'm talking Jefferson again. But when Jefferson has a problem, that becomes Oldham's problem. Dr. Radford, how many Oldham teachers just got hired by Jefferson because they pay a lot more than we do in Oldham County? Okay, so let me just talk about Jefferson County. There are 123 teachers who left early 2 years ago at Jefferson County.
Yeah.
23 of them in my district, I called them. They left early. They didn't retire on time. They left early. I called them and I said, why'd you leave? Not one person said pay, not one. They said, I'm scared of the kids. And I don't have the backing of the administration. It's discipline issues. Last year in JCPS, 592 deadly weapons. This is their numbers. 592 deadly weapons are brought onto schools by kids. Not one expulsion. If my kid goes to a school where there's this stuff happening, I have the right, even if I'm poor, to get my damn kid out of that school. And if I get my kid out of that school, and if 5 or 6 or 7 other ones do, what do you think the school board's gonna do?
Nothing.
They're gonna start taking discipline seriously, because they're gonna start losing market share.
Yep.
That's what they listen
No,
to.
they're not.
So that's what we have to do. So does it help this, so let me get back to the student teacher, the teacher problem. I think addressing those issues helps the teacher problem. Also, Ken Fleming has got some things that he's trying to do to get more teachers to come into the profession and to keep them in there. Those are the types of things. I also, when we came in 2017, the teachers' pensions were funded woefully low. Now they're not good. They're in the 50s. They're not great, but it's much better. We were losing bond ratings. That sounds like, oh, what does that mean? Well, it means that when you build schools, Dr. Radford's got to spend a lot more money to build a school. Crestwood had to spend $90,000 more on its public park. We got to spend more for this building and for all our roads. Well, because we pumped literally billions of dollars into pensions, our bond rating has went up twice. So we're trying. Kentucky is a poor state, and it is a big thing to turn, but we're trying to turn it. And the only thing I think that we've not been successful at is school choice. School choice is not for every kid, it's not for every family, but it's for a lot of families. And you, if it's good for your child, you should have the right to do it. If you don't want it, that's great, that's wonderful, but that's your choice.
I'm just trying to understand how it would benefit like me, because I don't really care about the rest of Kentucky. I care about my 4 kids. I'll be honest with you.
And I care about your 4 kids too.
Well, I appreciate that. But in terms of like need space, if I send 4 kids with school vouchers, I'm taking more money than I'm sending out to the state.
But that's what we pay taxes for. I pay taxes, he pays taxes, we all pay taxes to educate our kids. And so that's okay.
No.
There's nothing wrong with you, or I don't want to say an individual mom or dad taking more from the state than she's giving in. Because these are our kids. They're yours principally. They're your responsibility.
Yeah.
The God has given you the right and the responsibility and the duty, obligation, the beautiful thing to raise your children. But we have to support them as a community. And I'm totally cool with paying more taxes to help
So
as we do.
Are you saying taxes will then go up?
Taxes won't go up. They've not gone up in any state that hasn't. I don't know where we are.
We're lowering.
I didn't need it, I was just pointing.
I don't have an
Okay,
income.
yes, ma'am, and then John. Let's go.
So, speaking of the wording of the amendments,
So it
Yeah, okay.
sucks for me.
Wording of the amendments.
the wording of the amendments, one of them says particular places, the
Yeah,
other one says limited financial means.
yeah.
What that tells me is, one was drafted with charter schools, that charter school bill that was strict, that was like piloted in Jefferson County and Northern Kentucky in mind. And the other one is drafted with the school voucher issue in mind. But are you planning on kicking that out? Like, it doesn't seem wise to put that kind of restriction in the Constitution, given how hard this thing is anyway.
Okay, so let me tell you what's in there. So there's a section in our Constitution, section 59. It's called special legislation. So you can't enact one bill that only applies to one area, okay?
Right.
Now you can do it, you can say, if a city is of a certain size, then these things happen. But it has to apply to anybody that becomes of that certain size. So we couldn't say, this school choice is for Jefferson and not for Robertson. Robertson has 2,300 people in it, okay, under the section 59 of the Constitution. And that is listed, that section is listed in the version that we're talking about now. So the reason about particular places, the reason we do that is it may not make any sense in a county of 2,300 people. I don't know how many students are in there, but it's 2,300 citizens. I mean, we could hit a golf ball and hit 2,300 citizens in Oldham County. So it may not make sense in Robertson County the same way it does in other counties. That's the reason we have it in there. It's not about
But you don't think that's
charter
gonna turn voters off? Because I've
It
already
could.
seen pushback on that
Yeah, it
particular
might.
places thing.
It might, but I actually think it will turn voters on.
Okay.
Because if you live in a county that's 8,000 people, what you're going to say is, this may be good for Jefferson, but it's not good for here. I'm voting no.
Right.
But if it's not required that it comes everywhere, we've got an opportunity to get that vote.
Our rural
That's the
counties our schools are the primary employer in a lot of our rural counties. So
Right.
there's a lot of pushback in the smaller communities who are afraid that a school might pop up and they'll lose a lot of their students and then employees won't have jobs.
And in some states, some counties, the point I was trying to make a second ago, in some counties, 90% of their school funding is from the state. And so if they lose their state dollars, that will cripple their,
Yeah.
so that's the reason that it might work in some areas.
You take it from us in JCC minus JCPS, I'm in the JCPS district.
Yeah.
It's not gonna touch them. I mean, they're spending 20,000 a kid on some of these schools, yeah.
John?
Since we're talking about the particular places issue here, so both y'all know I'm one of the biggest proponents down there for school choice. Under no circumstance am I gonna go to the poll and open up the Constitution to codify discriminating against children just because of their zip code. And if I'm not gonna vote for it, I know my mom that's teaching in Bell County ain't gonna vote for it. So what's y'all's response to that?
I think more people will vote for it with that in there than will vote against it, for the reasons I just stated.
So you think that coal miner in Bell County is gonna understand that they're gonna say, okay, well, since they're deeming it proper to not be in my place, in my area.
Since they're what? Would you say?
Since they're deeming it proper.
Deeming it proper.
For it not to be in my particular place, I'm gonna open up the Constitution to say that I don't want none of that money in Hardin County. I don't want any of this money in Letcher County. I want it to stay in the rich, I want it to be only for the rich people in Louisville. You honestly think that?
Well, they'd be wrong, because it's not for the rich people in Louisville, it's for the,
But also, there's nothing in HB2 that says it's not for the rich people
that's true.
in Louisville. So what I'm saying is, if you're saying HB2 is changing, until I see it change, I don't believe that it's changing.
I'm not sure we can get it out of the legislature without that in there, by the way, but that's something we can have a conversation in our caucus.
That wording makes it easy to fight.
Easy to what?
Easy to fight.
As a legal question?
No,
As
the people.
Oh, you mean the opponents?
Yeah, the opponents can shred that to tears.
Yeah, they might, but if without the, I like this conversation, we're kicking the tires here, okay? So I may, I'm persuadable.
Yep.
Without that language, then I think a lot of rural counties will say, no way, I think this is great for Louisville, Lexington, but it's not for me, so I'm voting no. I think we got a shot at that vote if they don't think it's coming to their county, because they got a really small county.
They gotta understand that.
Yeah,
So there's been a lot of
You're pulling the
legislation
wool over
around
our
the
eyes.
country that has had good legislation that got defeated because it wasn't
yeah,
set right in the public eye.
yeah, I think it's a good point.
Get shredded.
Well, I mean, we saw that with Amendment 1 on the ballot in 22. It was hard to understand. Most people didn't know what it meant, and they just left it blank.
I think what you're saying is there needs to be some, you get 1.1 million Trumplican voters to vote for this thing, there needs to be some populist messaging, is what I'm hearing. When I hear exercise this authority by law in particular places as it deems proper, I don't hear populism.
What did I start with?
I hear an English aristocrat.
Well, the language
But
has.
that's why the limited financial means matters, because we actually can get people, we actually can fight that it's only for rich people in Jefferson County, it's only for rich people in Oldham County. If we specifically say it's only for people with limited financial means, now to answer your question, limited financial means, there's a bill in North Carolina that says it's 450% of the poverty line. That would be $257,000 a year for a family of four in Kentucky. It's pretty much damn everybody in this state. You know, so it's like, we can expand that out and they would define that as determined by law.
The court would define that.
Well, no, as determined, you would define that.
The
We talked about
legislature
this.
would.
You
And the
would
court
define
would
that.
say this isn't limited, right? But those kinds of amorphous words that mean something to me that's different from you, 7 Supreme Court justices will make it mean what they want it to
Okay,
mean.
so as determined by law, you and I have talked about, and said we thought that was a way to get that in there to where you all would define it. You're saying that you don't, because I would argue, when you talk about the loose ends, HB2 is loose. I'm a layman, okay? I got a degree in history, but y'all can hear me talk right now. I can poke constitutional holes in this thing myself.
Well, we've had 2 Supreme Court justices, former justices, and we've had dozens of lawyers look at it. I've looked at it, I think it's pretty strong on constitutional challenges. I don't think it's strong on language for persuading voters in the ballot box, and we're trying to improve that, but I'm fully confident that it'll survive a constitutional challenge.
So you're adding section 50, you are adding a reference to section 59, because right now, I can tell you right now,
Yes,
if you reference every other section and don't reference section 59, they're gonna say, why didn't you reference section 59?
I understand, and by the way, that's why that whole second sentence is there, but we're gonna reference section 59.
So is there a way to fix section 1, so you just get the bottom line up front, period, like say
Understand.
shall?
Yep.
Because like, I'm working at the Walmart and I got my break and I'm gonna go vote, I'm not reading this whole thing. Not
Yeah.
even close, I'm not, and I'm gonna read section 1 and I'm gonna go, does this mean school choice? Maybe you better say the words even.
So we've had a lot of these conversations, and we've had this kind of criticism, and so the language is different. Now, when it comes out, and when the amendment comes out, read it and make sure that the appropriate changes are made. But we agree with you, the language is not, as artfully drawn as it needed
And
to
when you
be.
shrink it down on a ballot, it gets really, really long.
Yeah, and people
Yeah.
just, I mean, having developed corporate learning for 25 years, writing training for adults at the 3rd grade reading level, and I'm not kidding, they won't get past the first paragraph. They'll either skip it or just vote no because they don't understand what it is.
Yeah, there's not 4 paragraphs, there's 2, I think there's 2.
I'm just saying, you get past the first section,
Yeah.
That's it. They'll look at it and get.
I think there's 2 sentences to the question and 2 sentences to the constitutional change.
Yeah.
We tried to be as tight as we could be.
But whatever's on the ballot, if it's something like this, it's not.
Understand, and it won't, it has been changed, Sarah.
School choice.
Yeah, so I wanted to make a statement and then ask a question, but, so for the young lady here with the 4 kids who I feel for you, I have 3, so I have 3. I will say, so I live in Jefferson County, I live right across the county line in Prospect. I could practically throw a rock and hit Oldham, unfortunately, I wish I just lived right over here. But I had.
They're selling houses.
When my, yeah, and the inflation and everything's but, so when my 3 were all in elementary school, I paid for them to go to private school while still paying property taxes. And because Catholic schools give a discount for each kid, I was paying $14,000 a year for all 3. Jefferson County spends between $14,000 and $20,000 per kid. I was saving the state a ton of money by not having to educate our kids. So I mean, we can do this a lot cheaper than the way that our counties are choosing to do this and the amount of money they're spending on administration, all these other costs. So I save the state money. You're welcome, everybody. You're very welcome. While still paying taxes. But my question is, I've heard a lot about vouchers. Could you explain the nuanced difference between passing this amendment and passing law, and what this amendment means versus what's gonna actually happen if the amendment passes?
Yeah, so if the amendment passes, then the legislature will put all the parameters in place and listen to people with good ideas and thoughts, like we heard a second ago about the lady having 2 jobs and so forth. So the legislature will then have the authority to enact a statute, and they'll go to business doing that. And so does that answer your question? That's the difference. So without it passing the Constitution, it's likely not allowed, although I think it is allowed. I think we can use other funds for it, but.
But if it passes, nothing changes at the moment.
That's right, yeah,
Nothing changes.
that's right.
There's no vouchers or anything.
No, there's nothing.
Then the battle comes down to, how do we want this to look? What do we want this to look like? What type of program? We've passed the educational opportunity accounts in the past. We've passed funding for charter schools, both of those struck down by the Supreme Court. So then we get into those battles in the legislature.
And if
So
you
it
wanna
will
look, if you wanna look at what we have in mind, look at what we've passed when we thought we had the authority, which I still think we should have, but the court disagreed. Only Kentucky, other states. But just look at what we passed, and that's the best barometer of what is in our mind of what kind of a program it will look like. Yes, ma'am.
For the homeschooling community, how much would the government step in? What is the risk of the government stepping into that area? Because I think a lot homeschool because they don't want that.
Yeah, so.
So what's the danger of that?
Yeah, so, from my perspective, so this is part of the conversation Sarah was talking about. Once it passes, we're gonna draft a law and see who qualifies and so forth. With respect to homeless kids, homeschool kids.
Well, we're almost homeless.
No, that's not fair. That was a mindset. With respect to, I was thinking about that because I wanted to say something that I wanted to respond, something Sarah said, and homeless kids are part of it, and I'll come back to that. Please remind me to. Homeschool kids. So, from my perspective, if you would qualify, because of the means testing that I want, and you accept that there are certain testing requirements, then you can get money. But if you don't want to accept certain testing requirements, the government shouldn't step into your business, but you can't get taxpayer dollars.
So we'll have a choice to take it or not.
That's in my mind. There's 138 legislators, and every one of us better be responding to our districts. And so, but from my perspective, homeschool kids would qualify if they qualify otherwise, and the parent ensures that we have to ensure that the kid's getting tested. So here's one big problem we have, mostly in our rural areas, and our rural legislators are freaking out about it right now. It's somewhat in Louisville and Oldham County, although I don't think as much. Maybe Dr. Bradford could correct me if I'm wrong. I hope I'm not wrong about this. Our average daily attendance in many counties, especially in our rural areas, has plummeted. And a large part of that is because after COVID, parents just didn't make their kids go back to school. So they're homeschooling them, but they're not really. And so it's really difficult, right? Because I have the right to homeschool my kid, my religious right, I've got that constitutional right, and by God, it's important, and I will defend that. But we need to make sure the kids get educated too. So are they really homeschooling them? So it's a devilishly difficult issue, especially right now.
I can give you some numbers if you want. In 2021, we were at 19.6% were chronically absent in the state. This year, or the 2022, the most recent data we have is 28.3% chronically absent.
And that is not even accounting for the homeschool kids, because they're off that numbers altogether.
And that's just public schools.
Yeah.
Now, you compare that to a 90% graduation rate, even though 28.3% are chronically absent.
Yeah.
Which means they're just pushing them through the system, which is not good.
I wanted to come back real quickly. Are we done, Lizzie?
Yeah.
I wanted to come back real quickly to something that was mentioned earlier, and then we'll come right here. And that is that public schools pay X amount per kid, and that's right. I think they pay perhaps, you can send a kid to Trinity and to St. Margaret Mary for the price it costs to send one kid to JCPS. Okay, fine. But that's not really apples to apples. Because, and while I think it's a good talking point, and I think it's important to know that fact, I think it's a good nugget to have. They don't have to take kids from all over the county. They don't bus kids, although I think we're busing too many kids to JCPS. We're trying to limit that. They don't have the same number of kids with, ESL kids and English and special education children. So they're not exactly apples to apples. And so I want to respect that. And I also want to come back to the beginning and say, while I strongly support school choice, this is in no way an attack on public schools. The most, and I'm going to put on my Jefferson County coat here for a second again. The most important thing in government, in my mind, in Kentucky government, is public schools. And JCPS has 1 out of every 6.5. There's not a close second to public education, in my view, of government. And so this is not an effort to attack public schools. If it were, I'm off the train. But it's not. And so while I think those things are important to know, those data points, it's also important to note that it's not apples to apples. Exactly. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, Lindsay, I was just gonna remind you about the submitted questions. Did you need to go over those?
I can.
I
I
have
probably
one
have
more
covered
thing
some
I
of them.
Let's
but
do it
I
before
will-
John gets to ask his second one.
No,
So,
go ahead, John.
Going back to
I'm joking,
the,
I'm joking.
the biggest difference between these two amendments is HB 208 and HB 2. HB 2 will open up the option of the government overseeing any type of alternative option that were to take place. If I were Trinity, I wouldn't even accept any money from this, because there's nothing that specifically says they can't come in and dictate what bathroom your kid has to use or what you gotta teach.
The First Amendment would step in and say that.
Whereas 208 is specific in saying, and again, going into that section 183, which is the bedrock of it, tells you exactly what your job is as a government. It says your job is to provide and oversee a system of common schools. But then as far as well, we'd be striking efficient. Whereas then, when it comes to school choice, your only role would be to provide the funds for those other options. There would be no worry of the government coming in and telling a homeschool kid they have to do something specific, or they can't get their money.
I don't have that worry. The First Amendment would apply, John. It still applies, no matter what we do here. The First Amendment will still protect the
You don't
religious
think there's
freedom.
any chance the government will come in and tell Trinity they have to teach certain things, or they couldn't,
What
they couldn't
part
put their money?
of two can you read out where you think that would fit in there?
Well, it just says the General Assembly may exercise this authority. It doesn't say what authorities it's getting, what authorities it's not getting.
But it's still subservient to the United States Constitution, which has the First Amendment, and the Kentucky Bill of Rights. Kentucky Bill of Rights is section 1 through 26 of our Constitution. And so this would be set in the section 180s, 170s.
But we tell public schools what they have to teach.
Yeah, but that's not a religious, that's not in view with a religious freedom question.
But right now, they're not getting any public funds. That's right. So if religious schools were getting public funds, that would totally change.
They were getting a lot of public school funds, actually, over the last few years.
Public
They've been
schools
getting
are
a
getting
ton,
public-
yeah.
So do you,
Yeah.
okay, so let me ask that question. Do you think HB 2 would protect religious schools from, or homeschools from, a complete government takeover?
In the highly unlikely event, and I mean highly, underlined, boldface, all caps, Helvetica.
Okay.
In the highly unlikely event that the legislature would ever try something like that, first of all, whoever introduces it is going to get smashed by the rest of us. If we do it, then I think the Constitution would knock it out. But it ain't ever going to happen in the first place. This is a General Assembly that's not going to be violating people's religious freedom rights. I think we've shown to the contrary quite substantially. That if we
We're
did,
not saying you can't teach Christianity. We're saying, okay, you're getting public funds, you have to put this in your curriculum.
and I don't think that'll happen. And if it did, I think it would get knocked down. If it's a
But
violation.
you're not
of
saying it can't.
I think that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm trying to say.
Okay. I guess what you're saying, again, like, to me, that's the biggest difference between 2 and 208, and then also the fact that this 208 is trying to make sure that the state is told, you're still responsible for the public school system, that is your top priority, you can't take money from it. And so to me, 208 is the one that is actually, you actually may be able to get some votes out in these rural areas, because you can actually tell.
It's almost like you
tell
wrote
a teacher.
208.
Do what? It's almost like I like
I'm
it.
just joking. It's almost like you wrote 208. It's, I love my baby. My child's the
know
prettiest.
where I'm at on this. But again, I'll just reiterate, again, if HB2 gets on the ballot, I think we're wasting our time, because it's not gonna pass, it's not gonna get 1.1 million people to vote for it.
I understand. Yes, sir.
But I think this kind of piggybacks on the earlier conversation about KDE and the rules, right? Like, okay, so now we have this competition, right? That's one of the arguments, right? You're gonna have competition between schools, which is great. But that almost implies that like you would need some sort of universal measure, right? How do we know school A is better than school B if school A does KSA and school B doesn't, right? Or if school A does some sort of portfolios and school C doesn't, right? So, I think there might be some concern there, like, I don't know if that's quite what you were thinking, but like, there would almost need to be some universal oversight, right?
No, it's the opposite of that.
Because it's a
You know,
parental choice.
because the we, you say we need to know what's better, the we is mom and dad.
Yeah.
And so I have a feel that Eastern is better than another school, or Eastern might not be as good as another school, whatever. And so that's my call as a parent. And so I think you're right that we need to make sure that more information is provided to everybody, all citizens, including parents, on school A versus school B and so forth. But that decision is going to be made by the parent.
So there wouldn't necessarily need to be like a state, like set of standards, or like the state, here's the state testing or anything like that. There wouldn't necessarily need to be any of that.
Well, we have those standards, obviously, right? Right, yeah, and so you can.
Most private schools have standardized testing as well, it's just not, it doesn't filter through the state's
That's what I'm
requirement.
saying, it's two different rule sets, it's two different.
And a parent can make the decision not to send their kid to set A or set B.
Yeah,
So
I mean, if they're not doing well.
But if you want more information from parents, I'm down. But that's a question that parents need to make, and I think they're equipped to make it. I think they're equipped to say, there were 4 guns brought at my school last week and nothing happened.
That's not really an Oldham County problem, so that's.
Yeah, fair point. That's fair. Yeah, thank God it's not.
The language in House Bill 2, specifically, and this may
And the
tie
language in
into
2 has been substantially changed.
Oh,
But we
okay.
gotta go with what's on paper.
Okay, but we're
Well,
gonna go with
yeah.
what's on here, because as a lawyer, the thing that bothers me the most is when it says the General Assembly may provide financial support and may exercise their authority. That means they don't have to.
Right.
May is a, I'm going to or I'm not going to. It's not a I shall or they will.
That's so good point.
Yep,
Such a good point.
I understand. I've heard that point
Okay.
from the day it was filed.
But that doesn't
Well,
incentivize going forwards with this bill then.
Right.
Because we're saying,
You mean by the
hey,
legislation?
the legislation, you're saying, hey, we gotta trust the politicians now.
No,
Right?
Exactly,
Don't
because
trust
once upon
any
a
of them.
time, we didn't have a Republican
I get it. Yeah.
So,
supermajority.
Well, if the people
In fact,
knock
for
out all the-
150 years, we had Democrats.
If the people knock out all the people that support school choice, then we shouldn't have the school choice program.
that's not for school choice though, that's in general. I mean, when you
Yeah.
use language may,
Yeah.
I mean, I was a military lawyer for 21 years. As soon as we saw may in a statute, we knew that nothing was gonna happen.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I don't think that's right. I don't think it's.
No,
right.
trust me.
It's not required. But if the people of Kentucky go to the polls and they say, 20 years down the line, let's say it passes and we have school choice, and they say this was an abysmal failure, I think the legislature should be able to get rid of it without having to amend the Constitution again. So that's why I think may is a better word here. If it's required to have the word shall, okay, fine, I don't care. It's obvious that the General Assembly wants it. We want it very bad. We've been
Okay.
passing it over and over and over
Okay,
again.
so why not use will or shall?
Because because in the future, if the General Assembly doesn't want it, because the people are saying we need to get rid of it, well, it shouldn't require a constitutional amendment. That's why I think we use the word may. So if somebody wants to use the word shall, I don't care either way, but that's the reason that the may was chosen over the shall.
Okay,
It's because it's more nimble in
So
response.
does shall have to be a vote again to change it?
No,
Yeah,
if
no.
if the word is shall, then the General Assembly has to do it in perpetuity, right? You have to do it. And if we find that it needs to be changed, then you can't not do it, because the word in the Constitution says shall. So then we'd have to amend the Constitution to delete that section, and that's why I'm saying we use the word may.
No, but I'm saying to amend the Constitution.
Yeah, it would have to
go to a vote again?
It would have to go to a vote again.
Yeah.
That's right. Yes, sir.
What's preventing these schools from closing in the middle of the school year?
Which schools?
These new charter schools. Like, we ran out of money, sorry,
Well, the charters are publicly funded.
right? So if, say I'm running a charter school, okay, and I'm on my 3rd year,
Yep.
but I'm not good with money, and then all of a sudden I look, you know, the cash box is empty, sorry, we gotta, you know, we're closing and we're leaving. What mechanism of control is there? Or are those kids just out of luck for that year?
Well, there's none now either, right? I mean,
We
so,
financially prop up our public schools that.
Well, but there are mechanisms of accountability to make sure that, like, a principal or a superintendent can't just say, well, we're out of money, Oldham County schools are gone. You know what I mean? And I'm not against charter schools.
Yeah.
I am for accountability and for mechanisms
Yeah.
of accountability. That's why I brought that up.
Yeah, I think-
Because in other states, this has happened.
it's happened in charter schools, that's right.
Yes.
I think that's an important question to ask. It has happened in charter schools. Not aware that it's happened in any scholarship tax credit kind of program. But the answer to that is, I think the parent needs to know what they're getting what school they're signing their kid up for.
So there is a risk because of the lack of accountability.
Well, there's always, I said, my youngest boy goes to St. Margaret Mary right now. They can shut down tomorrow.
How long have they been open now?
Exactly. And so I made the decision to send to St. Margaret Mary, not some new school.
Christian
Right.
Academy just shut down their school.
Oldham County Charter School.
Right,
Year one.
that's right. Yeah, Christian Academy, it does, yeah. So
Well, I'm
it,
not against it, I'm just saying.
yeah, so I think,
Find another school.
yeah.
I'm just, yeah, I'm not, I think there should be still mechanisms of oversight and accountability, not for every little thing, but certain things like fraud. Like fraud
Yeah.
happens in charter schools, shutting down in the middle of the school, you know, stuff like this, that we need to protect our tax dollars from waste. We also need to protect our kids from wasting 1-2 whole school years before mom and dad figure out that it's a total waste of time.
Yeah.
But as I said, in theory,
That's
there's a
what
lot
I
of
think that's in,
potential
I think
there,
that's in
but-
the mix. I think, although it's a concern, I don't think it's a big concern. I don't think, in the states that have it, Kentucky, thank God, 20 years later, it hadn't happened in those places. But I think it's something that,
But I mean, I'm just saying, in charter schools, it like fraud does happen, and the shutting down happens, waste
and fraud happens all over in public schools too.
And we need to do better with that. I'm
Yeah.
not here like carrying the torch for
Yeah.
public schools are perfect. I'm just saying that, like, I
We need
would like
protection.
to improve what we have, and if we're gonna put a new product out, make sure that doesn't have bugs either.
Yeah.
That's why I think y'all are smart. You can do both.
Yep, here and there. Yes, sir.
Jason, I think that goes to your point, though, that Kentucky is benefiting from decades of experience in other states of designing their charter school bill. The first charter school bill that was filed in the General Assembly, I think, was 2004, 2005. I don't know how many states had charter schools at that point and how many came online after that, but it was another 13 years before a charter school bill was adopted. I was there, I was in that administration. The amount of thought and effort that went into designing the authorization mechanism for charter school companies or nonprofits was very thorough. And charter schools, it is a mixed bag across the state. There are some states that have just done it poorly. There are some states that have done it kind of middle of the road. I believe that Kentucky did put into place as much qualification to make sure that there's not these fly-by-night charters come through or for-profit charter school
Yeah, they
companies
the Board of Education in charge of it.
coming through. And so, I mean, is anything potentially possible in terms of organization being defrauded and therefore on the verge of financial collapse in the beginning, in the middle of the school year? Yes. But it goes to, and it may come back to you all having to revisit the authorizing statutes for charter schools, but you build those protections into the authorization or the selection of the company to run the charter. So we do benefit from 30 years of trial and error
We do, and there have been a few schools that shut
Yeah,
down.
and I believe that they're capable and they care and, you know, they're attention to detail. It's just part of the conversation.
It's a legitimate question.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Between the carrot and the stick method of trying to fix our educational problems in the great state of Kentucky, siding a lot with this lovely lady back there. Money does a lot of talking. Wouldn't it be a little bit easier to maybe adjust the tax code than rather introduce a school voucher, school choice program for people who have their school choice and put it into exercise, and give a break on the school taxes for people who happen to make other choices than sending their kids to public school, rather than coming up with a whole new, very complicated program?
So you're saying people who send their kids to private schools get a break?
Or homeschool, or don't send their kids to public school, yeah.
I don't know if that can be done in the Kentucky Supreme Court's opinion. I think it still will require a constitutional amendment. Because that money would go, what they say is, even if the money's not in the state's coffers, it's a tax that's due, and so you can't divert it. And so that would be a diverted tax to a private school. And so I think it would still run afoul of the recent Kentucky Supreme Court opinion.
Well, we can use ESAs, or get a tax deduction. A lot of states also give their people tax deductions on ESA contributions or 529 programs. I'm sure there could be some mechanism within the tax code which would encourage schools to say, hey, if we don't straighten up, our schools are gonna start losing tax dollars because people are gonna exercise their newfound privilege, ability, right, to move their kids to a different school and actually take a little line item deduction off of their local taxes.
Isn't that what Arizona just passed?
Yeah, but ours,
It's still our constitution.
And I got you.
The Kentucky Supreme Court wouldn't allow it.
A constitutional amendment.
Yeah, so if it passes, that's something
might be a little bit of an easier pill to swallow than what you might be looking in the school.
Could be.
I'm just putting it
Yeah,
on risk
could be.
maybe right now.
Yeah, it could be, and that could be part of what we do if this passes. That would be the plan that we enact. It's very similar to the one we just did in 563. But right now, a diverted dollar from the general fund, even if it's not in the general fund, but it's owed to the general fund, the Kentucky Supreme Court says is a violation of our Constitution. Blaine, were you up? Did you have something? No? Yes, ma'am.
Just to push back on the accountability, that's something that comes up over and over, and it drives me nuts every time, whether it's the lieutenant governor saying it or whoever. And I'm in JCPS, well, I'm not in JCPS, we pulled our kids from JCPS. We have 1 in private school and 2 homeschooled, and I've been 30 years in the homeschool community, so I got kind of the breadth of it there. But we have 38% absenteeism in JCPS. And when I moved into the Highlands, which is one of the highest income bracket areas of Louisville, I had 6 schools in my cluster. 4 of them had fewer than half the kids proficient. 1 of them had 8 in 100. 8 in 100. There's no accountability in JCPS. There's nobody standing behind them and saying, if you don't get it to 9, we're gonna pull your money. If you don't get it to 15, we're gonna pull your money. So we fired them, and I want other people to have the power to fire them. But if you're on the homeschool question, if you're gonna trust the parents, because even at like the issue of testing and the absenteeism and are they really homeschooling them, it doesn't matter, it's not the state's question. Unless there is abuse, the state has no standing. I can pretend to homeschool, or I can get my kids graduating from college at 15. The state has no standing on that question. So if you're not willing to hold the public schools accountable, and private schools are accountable because I can fire them too. Like, it's way more accountable. If I'm paying $12,000 a year to send my kids to AIE, we both have a kid at AIE,
The principal's gonna
right?
come to your house and do cartwheels for you.
Yeah, like I can say, you know what, you're not teaching my kid to read, and so you're fired. We're going somewhere else. But we don't have that kind of accountability anywhere. And so when people say, oh, homeschoolers aren't accountable, we're accountable in the most intimate way possible. These are our kids. If we don't do what we say we're doing, our kids are going to fail at life. And so if you start saying that homeschoolers are not accountable, you're saying that we're trying to set our kids up for failure. Well, JCPS is actually setting our kids up for failure. And my kid is testing in the 90th percentile on the PSAT at 15 in the 10th grade.
And I think that's the control right there.
Right,
So-
but I nice campus,
Like
but
distant gold.
if I could say like drop my son off at the school on my way to work, pick him up on my way home to work, but then I'm still having to front all these fees
Sure.
and pay for lunch every day, which is something that, you know, public schools are. Like, if they're taking public money, would they be required to participate in the public programs, so to speak?
I wouldn't think so.
Mhm. Nope.
Okay, I've got a few questions here that, did we cover everything?
I don't think there's anybody in the
I'll just
queue.
maybe read through them and see if you did.
The first one was about why we haven't funded charter schools, and that was, the Supreme Court struck that down, so we couldn't fund them. We talked about limited financial means, I'll skip that one. My biggest concern, I see current government regulations tied to funding decimating our schools. What protections are there to make sure public funds aren't just controlled in the same way they currently are?
Say it
Kind of
again.
address this. What protections are there to make sure public funds aren't controlled in the same way that they currently are?
You mean by the public schools?
Yeah, just accountability, auditing, and
I guess so.
Yeah.
I mean, you gotta know who's running for school board, know your superintendent is, know
Yeah.
your fifth grade teacher is, I mean, that's,
you gotta be involved more than anything. I think that's kind of the whole underlying concept of school choice, is parents need to be involved. Let's see. We talked about, well, we kind of covered a lot of these already.
all right.
In your research though, did you find a state that's a good model to look at? for
As
this?
far as the amendment or school choice in general?
School choice as it applies to like a state constitution to open the door to allow it to begin with. I guess most of the states had to
None of-
kind of do that.
They didn't have to
first.
do it, because
They
there's.
did it. So this
It's
is
more
unique,
interpretation
kind
of the Constitution by the
Okay.
Supreme Courts and who we have in
Right.
place, and they don't lean.
They had
in
the right
favor
to do
of
it, so they,
choice.
I think this will be the first constitutional amendment, I believe, on the question.
Okay.
Yeah.
For once, we're like not 20 years.
Well, we're behind because our.
Still behind.
Does Virginia have school choice? Cause our Constitution is almost identical to Virginia's.
Well, in Pennsylvania, I don't know.
Even
the
as
answer.
amended though, cause this is an
Yeah.
1893
I don't know.
amendment that caused all this mess, right?
It was,
Is that
yeah,
what happened?
1890
Yeah.
is when it was amended, yeah.
Hey, Jason,
Yes, sir.
you know, one thing I'd like to say, it's been a good meeting, but it feels like public schools in general is getting a bad rap.
Mhm.
And let me tell you, folks, there's a lot of good public schools out there.
Mhm.
There's some bad ones, I'm not gonna lie to you. There's a lot of good ones, so don't let the word public schools turn you against them.
How many in here graduated from public schools?
In Kentucky or somewhere else?
That's my
Anywhere.
case.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, most people,
We didn't have a choice.
And most people will.
Yeah,
We
exactly.
didn't have a choice.
most
But
people
like I
will
said, there
stay
is
in
a lot
public
of-
schools.
And like Jason said earlier, check them out.
Yeah.
1980.
Check them out. But there's a lot of good public schools in the state. I deal with a lot of them, and, just don't give all of them bad rap.
No, there's a lot of great public schools, no doubt about it. Oldham County, Jefferson County, there's a lot of great ones. There's a lot that could use some that could use some improvement, obviously. And I think my reading of the materials suggests that school choice programs improve the public schools where they're in, and that's why I support them. No matter what happens, whether the vote is for this or against this, whether we have school choice or we don't, our public schools are gonna remain the most important thing in our government. And there's no question about that.
Jake, do you know how many, JCTS schools are TSI and how long they've been in TSI?
I don't know.
Gosh, we just sat through that. I don't have the numbers memorized, but
That'd be interesting.
yeah.
School improvement.
We saw all the, they're performing so low. They have to be in the state kind of intervenes and.
There's a lot.
I just wonder how long they've been in that status and allowed to
Yeah.
hang out there.
And you know,
Yeah.
I mean, this,
Some of them move
I'm,
in and out.
I'm in no business of giving excuses for public schools, obviously. If y'all watch the news, I'm a bulldog on the issue, and I'm trying to push it hard to improve my public school system, because kids in too many areas of Jefferson County and others have no shot without a good public school. But I also understand that our public schools largely, while they need to do better, can do better, will do better, they're largely a product of what is put into them. And our families are broken to a large extent. And so all of these things weave together. We're talking about public schools, and we gotta talk about that, we're going to continue to do that. We also have to figure out how we're gonna help the working mom and working dad, how we're gonna help, keep kids off the schools, off the streets shooting each other. I mean, these are issues that are outside public schools, but they walk in every day in the front door of the public school. So that has to be understood as well. This is not, if anybody wants to attack public schools, I'm not on your team. I'm not on your team. But I do think the mom and the dad who makes $35,000 a year and she's busting her ass, and she thinks that for whatever reason, maybe her kid's bullied, I don't know what the reason is, but this school's not right for my child. She should have the right to send her kid to a different school. That's what I fundamentally believe. That's why I'm for this. I want to improve the public schools. We'll continue to try to do that. Maybe I don't do as well as I should, but I try. But I think that mom should have the choice that I have. And that's why I'm going to fight like hell for her. Yes, sir.
Between saying things like that and then the lines that say the General Assembly may provide financial support for education of students outside of the system, do you think some people are confused that, or will be confused by the bill, that their entire tuition is gonna get paid for? Because like $35,000, you're right, if you took the tax money that you paid in the seat or whatever, you still wouldn't get into a private school with that money. So, some people are gonna be.
You'd get into a lot of public schools with that money.
I'm sorry?
You'd get into a lot of public schools with that money.
Private schools.
You get into a lot of private schools with that money.
Well, I mean, $14,000.
Well, $14,000 is a high school. K through 8, I don't know of any K through 8 in Catholic programs that's over 10. What is?
St. Aloysius, $8,000.
Yeah, that's full tuition. I guarantee they're gonna get breaks.
Average private school tuition in Kentucky is $7,300 a year.
Yeah, and I know they'll be given a lot of breaks. And they should.
Okay, but my question is.
I got you. Yeah, I think they probably will be. Some people may think I'm gonna get my full tuition paid.
Right.
Yeah, and we need to disabuse them of that notion. That's not necessarily true. Like, just because this passes doesn't mean you can go to, KCD at $25,000 if they don't give you a break, for sure.
Do you
That's
think
what it
that should
costs.
be specified in here, like, to the amount of the taxes you pay?
Believe me, the KEA will be letting you know.
Right.
But I mean, what would the language in there be in your iteration?
I mean, I'm no lawyer, but I'm just saying, it says that it will provide financial support.
It doesn't say full financial support.
Right.
Right, that's what I'm saying, so don't you think it should say not full?
Well, it could be full, but it could be full.
Some people may vote yes, thinking they're gonna get it.
But it could be full. It might not be, but it could be.
There is a bill that says provide for a portion of the educational cost.
Which one is that?
I'm just throwing it out there. I was throwing it out there, y'all can figure out which one it is.
My daughter's really pretty, right? Yeah, but it could be a portion, it could be the full rate. And also, by the way, as part of the ESA, we talked about going to private schools, but part of the ESA bill 563 allowed public school kids to have tuition paid for, to get a computer. So it's not just pay private school tuition. It could be for the public school kid that goes to Crestwood Elementary and mom thinks, we just need a little bit more in math. So I can use these dollars.
Speech therapy,
all those kinds of things are in play here. So it's not just the thing that everybody thinks of, and that's take kid out of Crestwood and send them to, private school X. It is that, no doubt, but it's also more than that.
You're saying you could stay in Crestwood and get the money?
Yeah, that's right. That's what 563 did, yes.
So you stay in public schools and then you get a check?
You get it for the assistance of that child, that's right. If you get it for tutoring or whatever, yeah. We're serious about educating these kids.
Oh, so this is not, we're talking about a different.
No, it's the same bill.
Is it like reamburnment?
Is it 563? House Bill 563.
I don't remember if it was a reimbursement.
Probably should be reimbursed.
It probably was, I don't remember, but clearly it was for the purpose, of it.
I think it was a tax credit for a private organization.
Right, but
So I could say, I'm gonna give this money
That's
to a
right.
private organization, and this private organization could say, if you're a poor person, your child needs speech therapy, extra tutoring, these things, comes from my private money, goes to these, poor kids who need extra help.
Yeah.
And then I get a tax credit from the state.
Yeah, but I think his point was, how do we prove it up, that they're not just taking the money and not really doing it? So
Right.
how do you, so is it a real reimbursement or whatever? So yeah, but we'd have to have those controls in place. I think we did, but yeah. Yes, ma'am.
If we're talking about, people with the lower income,
Yep.
And tutoring's, cause we do it for my son, and tutoring's expensive.
Right.
And for them parents to pay, I mean, they can have proof, maybe they show up and they get something signed, but how are the people on limited income supposed to pay that up front, the $50 an hour or whatever?
Yeah.
I mean, we pay, what do we pay for, I think
Yeah.
like 35 or something for 45 minutes.
Right, I think,
I mean, the programs are expensive and tutoring's expensive, so a lot of people's
Yeah.
not gonna be able to pay that up front.
right.
I'm just saying, I don't
No,
know
I
how
think
to
that-
figure it out.
Yeah,
but-
so I think the point that the gentleman was making was, we need to make sure that it's, that's
Right,
really,
yeah, that's-
so whether it's a reimbursement scheme, or maybe whether it goes to, entity A that says, here's these 20 tutors, and your kid qualifies because they need a little bit more math, or whatever it is, speech therapy, whatever, and then that entity pay, so I don't, we,
Just as far as the reimbursement is, whoever deals
Yeah, that
with
might not
rules, just keep that in mind, though, a
Yeah.
lot of these parents aren't gonna have that up
Yeah.
front.
Right.
So there needs to be another, like a thing to catch them.
Maybe a
You know.
list.
I think that's a really good point, we're wanting to get that kid help, and so let's figure out, I think it's a good point, and make sure.
Well,
Just a-
again-
Just a safety net, so they don't fall through the cracks, cause they can't pay the $50
Yeah.
an hour up front. But
The data shows that, like, I keep hearing all this about, like, homeschool parents are untrustworthy.
I don't know if we said that.
No, not you, I just keep trying to get this feeling. The data shows everything to the contrary.
That's right.
If you look nationwide, like homeschool, again, this is not a attack on public school, my mom teaches public school, I'm a public school graduate. But the numbers show that homeschoolers test above
Yeah.
public schoolers across the board, across the country.
Yeah, John,
Again, like,
yeah,
it just is what it is.
I think we have, for whatever reason, I think we have a lot of homeschoolers in this general vicinity, Shelby, Oldham, East Jefferson, for whatever purpose, and I think those kids are just rocking it out. But with the numbers going up so precipitously since COVID, it seems like there's an indication, and that's what these legislators are telling me, that they're not really homeschool kids. They're homeschool kids because they don't want to deal with truancy issues. So their parents aren't teaching them, they're just not making them go to school. So the traditional homeschool kid that we think of, those kids are rocking it out. They're going to Air Force, they're going to, Princeton, whatever, they're doing whatever they want to do in
We're
life.
still talking about a small number of kids, and we're talking about anecdotal evidence. We're not talking about like backed up by any.
John, these people are
by
freaking out in the halls, like in Franklin.
Oh, I know they are because they want their seat money.
Well,
You know the truth. I know who you're talking about.
Yeah.
Because they're also worried to death about letting them play football.
Where'd these kids go? They evaporate?
They're at home with their families.
Yeah, are
In,
they-
in rural Kentucky, you don't have the same issues as that you do up here as far as like not having this. You're talking about family values. You go to Bell County, Kentucky, you've got a lot more families
You do?
there. So
My friends
I
from
I just think it's a false flag. It's not real. It's not this paramount issue
Could be.
that everyone makes it out to be. I just don't believe it.
Maybe it is.
And if you wanted to tack testing on it to make them accountable, then you can't treat us differently. So if my kid tests in the 12th percentile, you can't do anything about it, because you're not doing anything about the kid at Malvin testing in the 12th percentile.
Fair point.
Yeah.
Good point.
Fair point.
I'll take the test, but you can't care what I get, because you don't care what JPS kids get.
All right.
Okay, thank y'all for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for doing this. Tell them to take a shot.
I think we covered all the questions.
No, they came in on and then say we had needed advance.
We gotta figure out how to end this now.
Yes.